I used to believe silence was a kind of love, that if you stayed quiet long enough, people would see your worth. I was wrong. The day my sister stood up and accused me, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Every word came from the same mouth that once whispered, "I'm proud of you." And my parents. They sat there, nodding. Not because they believed her, but because it was easier than believing me. That's the kind of betrayal that doesn't happen once. It's built layer by layer, through years of small doubts and quiet dismissals, until you wake up realizing the people you bled for have rewritten your story without asking. So I stopped explaining, stopped waiting for them to remember who I am, because this time, it won't be my voice that proves them wrong. It'll be the record they thought would destroy me. The room was smaller than I expected. Gray walls, low ceiling, the faint smell of iron. No windows, no air moving, just the slow, mechanical tick of a clock, cutting through the silence like orders you couldn't ignore. I sat facing the disciplinary table, palms flat against the cold metal. No files, no lawyer, no defense, just me, and the quiet hum of a place built to end careers. When the door opened, she walked in. Caroline, polished shoes, tailored gray suit, posture of someone who had never been wrong in her life. She took her place before the panel, chin high, voice steady, as if reciting a rule she'd memorized long ago. "Sir, I'm here to report Commander Marilyn Knox for falsifying her service record." The air shifted, the vents hummed louder, brushing cold against my skin. Caroline began listing the details. Deployment overlaps, medals missing from official databases, missions no one could confirm existed. Each accusation was delivered like punctuation, measured, professional, detached. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. Across the table, Colonel Harlan Graves lifted his eyes from the file. "Commander Knox, do you wish to respond?" I kept my voice level, my pulse steady. "I don't dispute the record." He nodded once, nothing more. As Caroline kept speaking about procedure and integrity, something inside me settled. This wasn't about lies or documents. It was about loyalty, about who was allowed to own the truth. Once, I had protected them with silence. Now, they were using it to bury me. A month before the hearing, the letter arrived. Unmarked envelope, government seal pressed deep into the paper. The message inside was no more than a paragraph, every word shaped like a command. Discrepancies detected in service record. Verification required. It felt clinical, but not unfamiliar. I'd seen hundreds of letters like it in my career, none addressed to me. That night, I powered up my laptop, signed into the Navy's secure network, and ran the access log myself. The moment I saw the IP source, something inside me went still. The connection didn't trace back to an oversight unit or a defense bureau. It came from the internal network of Knox Defense Consulting, my father's company. I called Caroline. Her voice was steady, too calm. "Transparency protects you." "Marilyn," she said, before ending the call. 2 hours later, the official complaint appeared in my inbox. I wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of how predictable betrayal had become in my family. 2 months earlier, she'd shown up at my door in Arlington with a bottle of wine and a question that didn't belong to her. "Why was your Iraq file sealed?" I'd answered simply, "Because some things should stay sealed." She smiled then, the kind of smile lawyers wear when they've already found leverage. She didn't understand what she had touched. Reverend Halo wasn't just another mission report. It was classified beyond her clearance. Sealed even from me once it ended. Later that week, I reopened the access log. 2 names glowed on the screen, hers and my father's. The files, my files, had been downloaded, altered, and re-uploaded. And that's when it hit me. The person who accused me of falsifying my record had used my own report to do it. My mother asked for dinner at the house. To talk things through, I went because she sounded afraid. The old place in Arlington hadn't changed. Oak-paneled walls, the long dining table, everything polished and branded with the Knox Defense logo, like a shrine to respectability. My father sat at the head, wine swirling in his glass, voice smooth and rehearsed. Your sister's only doing what's right. We can't afford scandals. I stared at him. And what if the scandal is you? He smiled, the way he always did before closing a deal. This isn't personal. Marilyn, it's business. Across the table. Caroline didn't touch her food. Her eyes locked on mine. Her tone clipped, rehearsed. I have to protect what Dad built. I didn't answer. I just watched the way the candlelight played against the polished logo on the silverware and remembered how, years ago, when I'd left active duty, they'd called me their military card, the veteran label that gave their company an advantage in federal contracts. Now I understood. If my record was declared invalid, the company would lose its veteran-owned status. They'd lose everything. Caroline hadn't filed the complaint to destroy me. She'd done it to protect them, to protect him. The man who'd taught her that compliance was a moral code, and loyalty meant never questioning authority. She thought she was saving the family. She never realized she was helping to bury it. When I left that night, the golden light of the dining room followed me into the dark, and for the first time, I could see the contrast. The warmth they lived in was built on my silence. Back in my apartment, I opened the NCIS summons again. The fluorescent light flickered across the page, my reflection sharp in the glass. They'd used my service to build their name. Now they were using my silence to protect it. On the screen, the line Reverend Halo, access restricted, blinked like a warning. I placed my hand over the keyboard but didn't type the password. A drop from my coffee cup fell onto the metal desk, spreading in slow, perfect circles, one inside another, like ripples from a bullet meeting water. The light turned cold. The air went still, and I knew this was only the beginning. The second hearing started right at 8. The air felt different that morning, colder, heavier, charged with something unspoken. Fluorescent lights glared off the polished table, turning every reflection into a mirror of fatigue. It was the kind of brightness that made people look honest and guilty at the same time. I sat where I always sat, posture straight, hands flat on steel. Caroline stood opposite, her binder thicker than before, the corners lined with colored tabs. Her voice was crisp, perfectly rehearsed. Commander Knox's record contains 3 overlapping deployments, she said. One lists her as acting lead for a task group that never existed. The words hit like clean, calculated cuts. Graves flipped through the pages, unmoved. He didn't need to show emotion. Silence was his language. Who authorized your access to these records? He asked. Caroline straightened her spine. Through contractor compliance. Graves paused, eyes never leaving the file. That contractor, Knox Defense Consulting, correct? The air thickened until it buzzed. She hesitated. Yes, sir. He gestured to the clerk. A moment later, the projector lit the wall. Access source, Knox Defense JWK Knox Admin. Date, May 12th. The name hit like static. My father's login, my father's system. Graves looked up now, his tone even. That's your father's company, isn't it? Caroline's jaw tightened. It is, sir. And you used their internal system to retrieve classified documents? For compliance review. Sir. Graves leaned back slightly. Voice steady but cold. Compliance review isn't jurisdiction for family contractors. A long silence stretched between every tick of the clock. Then he pulled another sheet from the folder. A mission order bearing my name and signature. 2 copies. He placed them side by side. The paper stock was different, the ink tone slightly off. This signature was copied from a previous document. He said quietly. Caroline froze. The room shrank to the sound of the clock and my own breathing. I spoke only once. I have nothing to add, sir. Graves nodded and closed the file with finality. Verification will be conducted. Hearing adjourned. As everyone left, the word copied echoed in my head. A single word, but it carried everything. Doubt, manipulation, and the quiet ache of being rewritten by the people who should have protected me. That evening, I went back to my apartment in Alexandria. The winter light came through thin and silver, painting lines across the wall where my service plaques hung. The metals had dulled, dust softening their edges. I sat beneath them, remembering the sand, the noise, the smell of diesel and fear. Mosul, 2011. The mission had never been meant to happen. It wasn't on paper. It wasn't official. A distress call had come through from civilians trapped in a crossfire. Our commanding officer was down. Comms scattered. I'd taken command without permission, rerouted convoys, used a fuel truck as cover, and pulled 17 people out alive. The mission was written as Reverend Halo. Later, it was sealed. My name erased under classification protocol. No one ever knew. Not Caroline. Not my father. I opened the old storage box, pulled out the leather notebook I'd kept all those months. On the last page, in my CO's rough handwriting, it read, Authorization, temporary command granted. CDR Marilyn Knox. I took a photo and sent it to Eli Mercer, an old friend now working at the Pentagon's archives. He called within the hour, voice low, urgent. That section of your record's been duplicated, he said, shortened. Someone tampered with it through a civilian contractor portal, outside the Navy net. Only one person could have done it. My father had once been a Navy engineer. He knew how to rewrite data without leaving fingerprints. And now, he'd done it again. This time, to prove my record false so he could protect the company. I pressed the phone to my ear. Can you find the backup file? Already looking. There's a classified folder, codename Halo. It matches your ID, but it's locked under CENTCOM authority. That was higher clearance than NCIS. Higher than anyone in this room could reach. When the line went quiet, I sat there staring at my reflection in the window. Half shadow, half uniform. I went to the closet and ran my fingers along the sleeve of my service blues. The fabric was cool and steady, untouched by revision. It was the only thing in my life no one had been able to alter. That night, sleep didn't come. Only the ticking of the heater and the faint hum of the city below, reminding me that truth, like duty, was never meant to be easy. It was meant to endure. The third hearing began under the sound of rain. Each drop struck the tall windows of the room in slow, deliberate rhythm, as if echoing the measured breaths of everyone inside. The light was sterile and cold, bouncing off the steel table that separated me from the people I used to call family. Graves entered, a sealed envelope in his hand, his steps unhurried. He placed it on the table with quiet precision. We'll resume the hearing, he said, his tone clipped, his composure unbreakable. Caroline stood to his left, shoulders squared, eyes lowered. Then came my father, Walter Knox, summoned not as a parent, but as a contractor witness. He carried his usual air of control, polished shoes, a black briefcase that gleamed beneath the light. Even now, he looked like a man walking into a negotiation he intended to win. Graves started, Mr. Knox, your company provided the data in this case. Can you explain how you obtained it? My father didn't flinch. We maintain archived access for compliance purposes. My daughter's request was procedural. Graves didn't reply. He simply motioned to the technician. The screen flickered to life, filling the wall with one email. From W.K. Knox Admin, Knox Defense, Com, to C.K. Knox, Do.D., Gov. Subject, use this version. If she denies, it'll prove the lie. A sharp silence followed. Caroline turned toward our father, her expression collapsing, her confidence gone. For a long moment, no one moved. Graves' voice broke the stillness. Mr. Knox, did you alter military documents? No, sir. I corrected them. There were inconsistencies. Graves cut him off. That's not your jurisdiction. The air tightened. Caroline's voice cracked. Dad, stop. He didn't. He looked straight ahead, convinced his version of the truth was cleaner than reality. Graves turned to the clerk. Record this as evidence. Then his eyes shifted to me. Commander Knox, any comment? Only that accuracy doesn't require permission, sir. He studied me for a second and gave a small nod. Not approval, but understanding. the kind only one soldier gives another. When the session adjourned, Caroline called after me, her voice trembling. I thought I was protecting the truth. I paused. You were protecting Dad's version of it. Outside, the rain kept falling, relentless. It didn't cleanse anything. It only revealed the dirt we'd been pretending wasn't there. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky stayed colorless. I was called to a smaller room, no observers this time, no pretense of formality, just Graves, a legal officer, and 2 NCIS agents. On the table lay a thick red folder, stamped in bold black ink. Classified, Reverend Halo. Graves slid it toward me. We reopened this under CENTCOM authorization. Please review. Commander. I opened it slowly. Each page smelled of age and salt. The ink slightly faded. There were maps, mission notes, authorizations, and then, near the end, a line written in my own hand. Temporary command assumed. Objective. Civilian extraction complete. Graves read aloud. Acting Mission Lead, Commander Marilyn Knox. Authorization granted by Maj. D. H. Larens. CENTCOM. The room went utterly still. It was the kind of silence that doesn't accuse or defend. It just ends the argument. Caroline sat behind us, shoulders trembling. For the first time, she understood that every discrepancy she'd listed had been redacted to protect classified names. My name, the supposed fabrication, had been the truth all along. Hidden, not invented. Graves closed the folder with quiet finality. The accusation is unsupported. The record stands verified. My father's voice broke the air. That can't be right. It's not a debate, Mr. Knox? Graves said, firm and unmoving. Then came the sound of his pen dragging across the paper, slow, deliberate, final. Effective immediately. A counter-investigation will open into unauthorized data access by Knox Defense Consulting. That single sound, the scratch of ink sealing a signature, was heavier than any gavel. As the others began to leave, Caroline approached. Her voice shook. I'm sorry, I met her eyes. You were never my enemy. You were just reading the wrong version. She nodded once and turned away. I stayed behind, staring at the red folder still open on the table. The letters, Reverend Halo, caught the light and blurred slightly, as if the truth itself exhaled. Paper doesn't lie, but people do, especially when they mean well. The final hearing was blindingly bright, every surface too clean, too silent. I sat where I always had, back straight, hands steady on the cold metal table. The air was so still that even the faint scrape of a pen felt deafening. Colonel Graves stood at the front, the red Reverend Halo folder in his hands. His voice was measured, precise. Commander Marilyn Knox's service record has been verified as accurate. All discrepancies resulted from restricted material accessed without clearance. When he said accurate, the room froze. No one spoke. No one dared breathe. He continued, his tone sharp as steel. The complaint is dismissed. An internal review has been opened into unauthorized access by civilian contractors linked to Knox Defense Consulting. My father stiffened. Caroline lowered her eyes. Graves closed the file. Commander Knox, your record stands. You may resume duty. No applause. No apology. Just truth. Placed back where it belonged. Caroline whispered. I didn't know. No one ever does until the system speaks. I replied. My father tried to argue, but Graves stopped him cold. This is about integrity, not family reputation. As I left, the door clicked shut, clean, final. A young officer saluted. Welcome back, ma'am. I nodded. The record had spoken for me. A week later, NCIS released the internal bulletin. Complaint against Commander Knox is closed as unsubstantiated. Counter-investigation opened regarding Knox Defense Consulting and civilian personnel, Caroline Knox and Walter Knox. The words spread quietly through official channels, clinical, factual, unfeeling. Knox Defense was suspended from all defense contracts indefinitely. Caroline's federal law license was placed under review. I didn't feel joy. Or justice. Just the kind of stillness that follows an explosion, when there's nothing left to repair. The war was over, but it ended too quietly to be called victory. Graves summoned me to his office. His desk was bare except for one closed file. "You handled this better than most would," he said. "I didn't handle anything." "Sir." "The record did." He chuckled, the soft sound of a man who'd seen too many endings. "Systems are cold, Commander, but sometimes cold is the only thing fair. That's why I stayed." I answered. On his desk, the final note was written in black ink. Record corroborated by Operation Reverent Halo. Cole H. Graves. Outside. Caroline waited in silence. She didn't look at me. "As I passed," I said quietly, "we both tried to protect the same thing, just not the same version of it." She wept. And for once, it wasn't from anger. No one had won. The system simply corrected itself. 3 months later, spring returned to Washington. D.C. The air was softer, the light gentler, like the city itself had exhaled. I walked through the corridors of the Pentagon, the sound of my steps echoing faintly against the polished floor. My office felt smaller than I remembered, but cleaner somehow, stripped of weight. On my desk sat a fresh internal audit report, waiting for my signature. The final line was printed in bold. Documentation reviewed. Verified. Consistent. I picked up my old black Parker pen, the same one I had carried through Iraq. The ink flowed steady, the line dark and sure. A young officer appeared at the door, lingering a moment before asking, half teasing, "Ma'am, do you ever get tired of being right?" I smiled faintly. Being right is overrated. Being accurate, that's survival. That evening, I drove to Arlington. The house was quiet, heavy with the kind of stillness that follows shame. My mother sat in the living room, knitting by the window. On the dining table, everything still bore the Knox Defense logo. Cups, plates, even the napkins. I looked around and let out a quiet breath. They branded everything but their conscience. She paused her knitting, eyes soft. "He didn't mean to ruin you. He just didn't bother checking," I said. We didn't speak after that. There was nothing left to explain. I stepped outside onto the porch. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and new grass. For the first time in months, the air smelled clean, no ink, no lies, no residue of data twisted into something cruel. No vindication needed. I thought, accuracy is its own revenge. Then I walked down the path, leaving the house, and everything it represented, behind me. The truth had finally been recorded, whole and untampered, not just in the system, but in me.